customer retention is the new growth strategy for business. And so whether you're an accountancy firm, whether you're a small business, whether you're a large business, your existing customers are worth a lot to you at this moment in time. So I've been in marketing for, well, I did a degree in marketing. First job was basically starting at the very bottom in a financial research software company, working my way up into companies in the ERP space, building out marketing teams. Spent 4 years at NetSuite, 3 years at Xero, and I've been at Soldo for just over 2 years. The whole point of this session, when we spoke about it before, was it's trying to provide some foundational building blocks for businesses in terms of how they should consider marketing. Marketing is not some sort of dark art, even though people might try and tell you that it is. A lot of marketing is really just really common sense. When you look at something like 4 Ps, you've got product, price, place, and promotion. What does that really mean? So it's really a case of what product do you have or what service do you have, how much are you selling it for, and how are you selling it? And that's really the fundamentals of marketing. If you think marketing's this really tough thing that's beyond you, it's rubbish. You're already doing marketing in your current role. You just don't realize it at this moment in time.
In what way? How are people marketing without knowing it?
Well, I mean, if it comes back to how did you decide what product or service to offer? So, the offering that you've got in market at the moment, you probably did some background research. You identified the fact that there was a need in the market for a service like the one that you're offering. You probably undertook an analysis looking at the other players in the market that offer something similar to what you provide. So, I mean, when a business is coming up with a solution, you're always going to do a level of market research to understand what the scenario is and how your product fits into that. And I think that's fundamental. It's like when you're looking at it, you're trying to establish what is the addressable market you're trying to serve, what's the solution that you're actually providing, what service is it actually providing, and what benefit are people going to get from using your product or service as well. And all of these things, when it comes back to product development, product kind of ideation almost, you have to have kind of like some of the core constructs of marketing as the basis of why you're doing what you're doing. There has to be a purpose to what you're doing.
Absolutely. And so once people have done that, they created their offering and they've done that with those 4 Ps in mind, a lot of people then get stuck on the promotion, right? And they think, well, we'll just stick a Facebook ad up, or we'll just go and speak to our friends and family. Like, what are some effective ways that you've found to really think about the process of promoting a product or a service? Well,
it really depends on the type of service that you're actually offering or product that you're offering. So, there's a big difference between consumer versus B2B. It comes back to, do you have customers at the moment? Do you have good referenceability within your existing base? So can you use them as a pivot point to actually get access into other businesses that are like them? Customer referenceability is amazing. If you've got customers that love your product and are prepared to be advocates for you, then awesome. But you've also got other mechanisms. Just doing a Facebook ad is quite lazy, if I'm being honest, in terms of just going out and sticking an ad out there and expecting to get business to come in. Things don't work that way anymore. You have to work a lot harder than that. It comes back to what products and service you're offering, what audience you're trying to go after, and the type of media that they're likely to be consuming on a day-to-day basis. You see a lot of social media influencers that are pushing certain products and services that are being driven very much to the consumer space, to the kind of like the generation below me. So my kids or whatever else would be much more, aligned with that type of message. Mm-hmm. So if someone's trying to sell an overpriced piece of designer gear, like jumper or whatever else, they'll use a social media influencer and target my son. So that's the type of audience profiling that you kind of need to do. And then you need to choose the right channels to actually engage with that audience as well. A lot of media is actually very, very cheap at the moment. So you've got an awful lot of large advertisers that would be spending millions of pounds with Google, with Facebook, and some of the other platforms. and they've just slashed their marketing budgets. They're not spending the money at the moment because they're waiting for the situation to recover. So there's some opportunities, and there's some great free offers or trial offers that are available from a lot of those providers. If you just Google it, you'll be able to find some amazing offers from Facebook, some from Google as well, just to get started. And there's so many online resources that you can call upon as well to understand how you actually put in place simple search ads. What do you need to do in terms of, when it comes to sending out email campaigns and all that sort of stuff as well. There's lots of free tools out there that you can use, but similarly, once you've outgrown those, there's plenty of paid for solutions as well, but don't break the bank. If you look at a large organization, they might be using things like, Eloqua, Marketo, Pardot, things like that within their business for marketing automation. There's a bunch of really cheap solutions out there for marketing automation that really levels up and means that any organization can do marketing campaigns through email if they want to.
I guess there's a return on investment calculation, right, before you step that up to say, well, if we think we're going to bring in X amount of revenue, then we can afford to get a better tool.
Yeah, and you need to understand what the cost of sale actually is and what's an acceptable payback period. So, we talk about CAC, so cost of customer acquisition. Cost of customer acquisition is calculated based on, if I'm going to spend £100 and I'm going to generate £100 worth of revenue over the course of 12 months, then I've got a 1-year payback period on that. Okay, yeah. That doesn't sound terrible, but are you actually going to have that customer for 12 months? Are they going to be paying you that set amount of money for 12 months? Or, is what you're offering going to generate 2 months worth of revenue, but you've spent 12 months of revenue to actually acquire that customer? You have to cut your cloth to suit. You have to choose the solution and the marketing activities that are going to mean that you can acquire customers in a cost-effective fashion.
And in your experience, how well do small businesses stay on top of those sorts of metrics? So the cost of acquisition, payback period, those sorts of things.
Unfortunately, a lot of companies, what they do is they'll have the minimum viable in place, but they're not really tracking it. So it's like, I've got an ad here or I've got an ad there, and I'm doing something in a local trade paper or whatever it might be, and that's it. And they're expecting that to work for them. Marketing doesn't work like that anymore, right? And actually the buying process has completely changed in the last 10, 15 years. It used to be a case of, someone would be actively searching for a solution. They'd want to speak to a salesperson straight away. It just doesn't work that way anymore. What people are looking to do is they're looking to actually consume content. They're looking to actually go so much further along the sales funnel than they otherwise did before they want to engage with sales. So, a great tip is to actually, if you're an expert in your field, which you should be if you're a small business and you're focused on a given segment, educate the market, create some amazing content out there that's super cheap to do, and gets you an audience, and people start to consume that content. And what you're doing is you're building an audience. You're building an audience profile that you can ultimately sell to in the future. It doesn't cost a lot, and especially at the moment, if with perceived downtime, although it doesn't feel like it's downtime at the moment, but for a lot of companies where there is downtime, there's an opportunity to really look at what you're doing, start with the basics, build out some amazing content, engage with an audience that you define. So if you know, for example, that most of your customers fall into a certain demographic, and you can easily access audiences like them, double down on it. Go after the audience that's low-hanging fruit. Don't try and chase the dream. Focus on the here and now, because there's plenty of companies and plenty of people out there ready to buy still. It's more a case of making sure that you're actually kind of getting through the noise, which is what's out there at the moment. And even if they're not in a position to buy now, then they will be when they come through COVID. So use this as an opportunity to educate the market and really take the opportunity to engage and share your content with as many people as possible.
How does the current crisis and the way that things are at the moment impact or affect those basic fundamentals of marketing?
Historically, I think there's been a view, certainly within the kind of like startup world, the fact that everything's all about top line growth. A customer retention is the new growth strategy for business. And so whether you're an accountancy firm, whether you're a small business, whether you're a large business, your existing customers are worth a lot to you at this moment in time. And so anything that you can do to make sure that you're holding their hand, making sure that those customers are still with you beyond COVID. If you show love to your customers now and do the right thing by them, they'll recommend you to all their friends and family.
You mentioned a target audience and kind of really understanding what your niche is and who you're going after. How specific should people get with defining that niche?
It's funny, if you talk to business owners, certainly small business owners, and you say to them, "What's your niche?" Many of them will say, "I don't have one. I sell to everyone." Same if you talk to accountancy firms as well. And the truth of the matter is, everyone has a niche. Everyone has a niche. You just may not recognize that you have a niche. And what I mean by that is, if, for example, you're an accountancy firm and you've got a disproportionately high number of customers in the hospitality sector, well, but you just think that all your customers are the same. Well, no, they're not. You've got a niche. You've got a niche which is the hospitality sector. So double down on that. Most businesses will have a natural bias towards a certain type of customer. Identify that and just continue to focus on that particular audience, and the benefits for your organization will be huge.
And these are insights that people can get from their existing business information, right? And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to go and speak to accountants about this sort of stuff. Like a lot of the accountants we work with want to get beyond the pure financial reporting sort of services and really dig down and help their businesses grow. And this surely would be a great opportunity for people to go and speak to their practices or their accountants about.
What this is it's actually about providing business advice, almost like a consultant to your clients, to actually help them do the right thing and help them grow their business. Too much conversation at the moment is focused around CBILS and various other things to effectively bridge the gap. There's certain activities that you can do that are not going to cost a huge amount of money, and one of them is actually profiling your existing base, and that's exactly what accountants do as well. They profile their existing base of customers to understand which ones are a good fit for certain solutions. Well, why not do exactly the same thing in terms of recommending that same course of action to your clients, so that they can identify where there are characteristics or common characteristics in their client base, where they can first unpick referenceability, identify new opportunities, and build a specialism, go after a particular market. And if you're focusing on one or a couple of markets or a couple of core segments, it's much easier to build a cohesive strategy to engage with that audience rather than a spray and pray approach. If you're much more focused in terms of the audience that you're trying to engage with, you can understand their core pain points, you can identify the businesses that fall within them, you can identify the channels to actually engage with that audience as well, and you can save a huge amount of time and effort by actually using the assets and the specialisms that you've built up as a business to engage with other businesses like that. You do become a trusted advisor. The benefit to a lot of smaller companies as well is the fact they can pivot much faster than bigger companies as well. So there's an opportunity. If you see an opportunity out there in the market, well, go after it, right? But you have to be considerate about the fact that actually, what's your commercial model? What's your commercial? How are you going to monetize your offering? There's a lot of companies at the moment that are offering services free of charge. That's awesome, right? Free of charge services are great, and actually, in a consumer way, it kind of makes sense. The challenge that you've got, though, is will businesses see that as being anything more than an extended trial when COVID-19 comes to a conclusion? I would recommend that actually you're almost better off to actually discount rather than giving for free at this moment in time, because then what you're doing is you're getting customers to actually commit with you from the outset rather than saying, hey, it's free.
And so if we get to a position where we know what we're selling or the solution we provide, we know who we can provide that to, is it just as simple as then getting that message in front of that person and saying, right, okay, you've got a problem, we've got a solution, let's do something? Or do you have to take that audience through a bit of a journey to build trust and then want to come on board with you?
I mean, it would be awesome if there were millions of people out there that were just ready to buy your product like tomorrow. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So there is a journey. The question is how long that journey takes and what are you going to use to actually engage. Now, content marketing is a great thing to use at this current moment in time, because there's an opportunity, as I say, whether it's a blog post, whether it's assets that you're seeding to market, whatever it might be, whether it's customer references that you can use as well to really highlight how your solution is being used by other companies like them. What that allows people to do is it allows them to go through the research phase to actually identify you can prompt them and say, this is your problem, but then it's tying back to how your solution helps them with that problem. And if it's just like getting a sledgehammer out and trying to hit someone over the head with it, then that's not going to work, right, in terms of driving that message home. So it's great to seed the market, to prompt them to say, hey, this is a problem that you've got, but then to actually give them the assets so they can consume at their own pace. So that, but ultimately thinking about it as a funnel, so that actually you've got top of funnel content, some mid funnel content, and you're moving people through that process to a point that they're then ready to engage with you and ultimately buy from you in the future as well. The problem with a lot of companies still is the fact that they think that, as I say, people want to, that they visit the website. It's like, right, you want to buy. No, you don't want to buy straight then and there. What you want to do is you want to consume content, understand how that suits how your problem can be fulfilled through that solution, and then once you've got that, then actually then there's an opportunity to sell to them. But you have to, I talk about it in terms of like awareness, and then consideration, then acquisition. You've got these three stages to take people through. How do you make them aware of the solution? How do they understand, how your solution is going to help them? How do they then think, I get it. I get how this solution is going to solve this particular problem. And then how do we drive that through to conversion? And that's what everything should be focused around: conversion through to acquisition.
And what sort of things could small businesses do to kind of really own and control that funnel? Because, of course, you don't want someone seeing a bit of your content and then going maybe and finding someone else to go and solve that problem. So how do you control that?
Well, you give them the tools first of all. You can. The assumption would be that you've got a website in place. Yeah. That you can drive people through to that website, and then what you can do is retarget that audience as well. So one of the cheaper ways of using some of the online solutions, whether it be Facebook ads or whether it's display ads on Google, is retargeting. So what you can then do is you can say, okay, I've driven an audience through to my website to consume some content. I'm going to then retarget that audience to try and get them to come back by giving them additional assets that they can then consume. You can also use gated content, and gated content is where you might have a piece of premium content on your website and you're getting someone to enter their email address, for example, to then access that particular asset. The problem with that is it's a huge point of friction, and whilst it used to work in the good old days, it really doesn't work that well anymore. So you're almost better to understand, okay, how can I service this audience? How can I make sure that I can engage them over an extended period of time? It could be signing up to a newsletter. So it could be the fact that actually you're creating monthly content or weekly content, whatever it might be, and you're getting people to consume that content on a regular basis. It's about building a list. It's about building an audience, and that audience can be built in a multitude of different ways. You can either buy a list. You can target a very defined audience, and it might be very, very local to you. It might be much more kind of like regionally dispersed. But ultimately, who's the audience that you're trying to sell to? What's the story? What are the assets you're going to take people through to actually take them through that journey? And then how are you going to close that customer? How are you going to make sure that you continue to engage and have a dialogue with that customer over an extended period of time? It's a challenge, right? But actually, there's a ton of assets out there that can help small businesses with this. What I'm trying to talk about is not so much the theoretical side of marketing, but it's more the putting it into practice and actually driving an end result. And test stuff. There's nothing wrong with testing stuff and failing. If you fail fast, it's an awesome thing, right? As long as you learn from your mistakes and then try something different in the future. The worst thing in the world is failing slowly, because what then happens is you start along a particular route, you don't learn from your mistakes, and all you do is you burn time. And time is the one thing that business owners don't have at this moment in time.
So on the more practical side, you've mentioned that there are lots of free tools. Are there any that you would recommend?
Well, I mean, there's simple things that you can. Google Analytics is a primary solution. So if you think about that, what's happening on your website, just by adding a simple bit of code onto your website, you can understand what's happening in terms of traffic on your website. It doesn't cost you anything at all. You can see all the basic kind of like metrics associated with your website. We still use Google Analytics as an organization, even though we've grown massively. There's so many free tools. You can start with with. You can start with low-cost marketing automation platforms. You can start with simple email automation platforms as well. There's a multitude out there. The other thing is use Excel and manage your marketing budget. So what is your marketing budget? How much are you prepared to spend on this stuff? On each of the different activities. Make sure that you're really, really granular in terms of the way that you look at spend as well, and make sure that you update that on an ongoing basis. Budgeting is one of the things that's an absolute nightmare for a lot of organizations. But it's very simple to do, right? It's a very, very simple spreadsheet that you can create that says, what are my line items, categorized if you need to, if it's complex enough, and what are my months or what are my weeks, and how much am I spending in each one of those periods of time, and just keep tabs on that, because what you don't want to do, you don't want to open up Pandora's box and be in a situation where you're spending a ridiculous amount of money on certain things and you're not tracking what the outcomes are from that. You can also, if you're already using Soldo, for things like online spending, for whether it be Facebook ads, whether Twitter ads, whatever it might be, you can use something like Soldo and set limits in terms of the amount spent on a daily basis. Now, that's not a typical way in which a lot of our customers will be using Soldo at the moment, but actually it's an awesome application for the product, because what it means is, okay, I'm not going to put my credit card behind this, which is basically like a loaded gun. What I'm actually doing is I'm using my Soldo card, and what I can do is set predefined limits on how much can be spent on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so I don't go beyond the tolerances of what's acceptable in terms of paying out for certain channels. So you can do all of that type of activities, and if you are going to pay for certain subscriptions, again, you can potentially use Soldo for that as well if it's an online subscription. It just means that you keep complete control of the actual money that you're paying out to actually run the activities to support your organization.
That's a challenge, right? There's so many of these different tools that you can use, and with AdWords or whatever spend, you can suddenly be in a position where you're out of control of what's actually going out of your company, right? So great tool there to kind of manage that.
And a big tip in terms of Google AdWords especially is do your research before creating an account. And what I mean by that is you've got broad match search, you've got exact search, you've got various things, phrase search, so all of these different things. And if you set something up and say your recruitment software or whatever it might be, or very targeted, you only want to target a very small part of the audience, yet you don't set up the AdWords account and the search strings and the keywords properly, what you end up with is, instead of targeting an audience that's this big, you could target an audience that's this big, but only this proportion of the audience are ever going to want to buy your product. So just be sensible about the way in which you're structuring things, and now's a good time to get on YouTube, consume a load of content in terms of people giving best practice in terms of all of these different areas, and just use it as an opportunity to apply that best practice to the way in which you're running your business.
Darren, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would add before we wrap up?
No, I think the one thing I would say is, just going back to COVID-19, is even if you're a business that's been running for a period of time, and if you think about what the value of one of your existing customers is, and you're building your business plan and your marketing strategy and everything else based on the value of a customer that you've had up until this point in time, the truth of the matter is we just don't know what's going to happen in terms of customers that we acquired during the COVID period. So you need to be really, really, you need to track what's happening with the customers that you're acquiring now, and seeing how they compare to the customers that you acquired historically, to understand what you should be doing moving forwards. And whilst that's not supposed to be scare people, it's the truth of the matter is there will be more companies that will fail as a result of COVID-19. There will be companies that were very viable entities that will not be here in 3-6 months' time because they've run out of cash. But if you pay to acquire that customer and then they're no longer trading, then you're not going to get that money back. So understand what's happening with customer buying behavior, understand what's happening with your customers in terms of customer acquisition cost, how that's changing, what the return on investments is as well, and just track that throughout the customer life cycle. And if you've got a better handle on the customers that you've got already, and the customers that you're acquiring now, you'll come through COVID-19 in a much stronger position than you were before COVID-19 in terms of the hygiene factors associated with how you run your business.
Darren, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it, mate.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.